You don't read Nietzsche to be comforted. You read him to be stripped bare, to watch the illusions peel from your mind like dead skin. And when he spoke of women, he did not whisper. He shattered the silence. Everything in woman is a riddle, and everything in woman has one solution. It is called pregnancy. One sentence, a single shard of thought that lives like a wound in the modern psyche, mocked by some, feared by others, understood by almost no one. This wasn't just misogyny. It was something far more disturbing, reduction, to reduce a soul to a function, to compress the vastness of personhood into a single biological outcome. But Nietzsche was not speaking as a biologist. He was writing as a philosopher of illusions. To understand this line is not to agree with it. It is to descend into nature's world, view one built not on morality, not on compassion, but on the cold mechanics of instinct, power, and continuity. He wasn't writing about women. He was writing about masks, the masks we wear, the roles we play, the beautifully constructed lies we call identity. In that mirror, woman became the ultimate metaphor. Seductive, mysterious, dangerous, not because of what she is, but because of what she reveals. She reveals man's weakness, his projections, his longing to believe in something eternal, something pure, something safe. She exposes the lie that we can domesticate nature with virtue, with sentiment, with moral dreams. Nietzsche didn't trust kindness. He called it the first disguise of the weak. He believed that what we call morality was often a slow suicide of the will. The herd, the church, the family, all systems built to dull the blade of instinct. To him, the modern world wasn't progressing. It was numbing itself to death. And in that world, woman stood as both a fantasy and a terror. She was not just a person, she was life itself, chaotic, fertile, uncontrollable, and above all, unknowable, not a puzzle to be solved, but a mirror to what man fears most, that everything he believes might be an illusion. And that's what makes the line dangerous, not its coldness, but the mirror it holds to modern thought. We approach Nietzsche with eyes trained in equality, sensitivity, progress, and yet his words remain jagged, unapologetic, primitive. He asked a forbidden question. What if our deepest roles, man, woman, love, virtue, are just myths we mistake for truths? What if woman, as we understand her, is not a person at all, but a role, written by the hands of men who long to possess what they could never control? Nietzsche didn't care for romantic ideals. His obsession wasn't with women. It was with truth, and truth, to him, was never gentle. It had no time for comfort, no patience for lies, no softness in its voice. Truth, he believed, is the cold wind that strips the soul of every illusion it clings to for warmth. And in that wind, every mask shatters, every lie bleeds, and every reader is left asking, what am I, when I no longer believe in who I thought I was? It was brutal, animalistic, a force that stripped away the masks we wear to survive civilization. Nietzsche didn't believe people sought truth. He believed they sought safety, meaning, even if that meaning was wrapped in lies. And in his world, femininity became a test. Can man face what he cannot understand, without trying to dominate it? Let's be clear. Nietzsche's writings were not feminist. They were not empathetic. They were not coherent by modern standards of political correctness. They were fragments torn from the battlefield of one man's war with illusion. And in that war, he weaponized language not to soothe, but to confront, to destroy, to awaken. Woman was one of many targets, not because she was guilty, but because she was sacred. And Nietzsche had a single ritual for the sacred: shatter it, expose it, burn it down to see what survives. This isn't a video about blaming women. This is a video about perception, about how gender is not born of understanding but of fear, how we project our unmet needs onto others and call it nature, and nature, brilliant, broken, merciless, held up a mirror. A mirror in which beauty becomes deception, care becomes control, and love becomes a transaction of power. Before we go further, ask yourself, are you willing to let go of what you believe? Because Nietzsche did not write to confirm your world. He wrote to shatter it. When he looked at woman, he wasn't trying to understand her. He was trying to expose you. He didn't believe in morality. He believed in instinct, raw, unfiltered, animal instinct, and above all, he believed in one law, the will to power. Not domination, but the invisible force within every living thing to grow, to overcome, to assert, to reshape the world in its own image. And for Nietzsche, power didn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wore perfume. He didn't see men and women as equals, nor as opposites. He saw them as strategists. Men, he believed, pursue power through external conquest, war, ambition, achievement. Their power is visible, linear, celebrated. But women, Nietzsche believed they played a different game. Not weaker, not lesser, just hidden. Their power was inward, psychological. They seduced, influenced, commanded, not through force, but through desire. He called it the art of the weak. But he spoke it like a man who knew that this art could topple empires. And here's where the discomfort begins. Nietzsche wasn't describing women, he was describing a survival strategy. One that thrives in constraint. When a woman couldn't vote, couldn't rule, couldn't fight, she had to become covert. Power became psychological. Seduction became a survival tool. Emotion became a lever. Morality itself, Nietzsche believed, was born from weakness. The weak invented ethics to shame the strong. They called the lion evil not because it was, but because it was free. And in that framework, femininity became the ultimate moral weapon. The ability to control not through force but through guilt, through absence, through emotional leverage. But let us be careful. Nietzsche wasn't writing a manifesto against women. He was mapping the battlefield of the soul. He didn't hate the game, he simply refused to pretend it wasn't a game. Society lies to itself. It calls its power structures love, its strategies virtue, its manipulations truth. Nietzsche peeled back the skin and exposed the nerve. Woman, in his philosophy, was not a villain. She was a symbol, a cipher, a test, not of morality but of man's ability to see through his own illusions, to see through beauty and recognize the psychological theater beneath. What disturbs us today is not just what Nietzsche wrote, but how accurate it still feels. In a world obsessed with image, with aesthetics, with attention, are we really that different? Social media is now the new battlefield of the will to power. But now we don't fight with swords. We fight with curated aesthetics and algorithmic seduction. Nietzsche saw it coming, a world where appearance would overtake essence, where persuasion would replace honesty, where seduction, once called feminine, would become the default mode of survival for everyone. And here lies the twist. Nietzsche was not condemning femininity. He was warning us that we are all becoming performers. The will to power is no longer brute. It is psychological, emotional, aesthetic, and in that transformation, gender becomes a costume, not a core, a performance of power, not an essence of being. Nietzsche's true warning was not about woman, it was about man's refusal to understand her, his tendency to worship what he cannot grasp and destroy what he cannot control. And nowhere is this clearer than in how philosophy has treated woman. She is rarely neutral. She is either idealized or demonized, adored or blamed, worshipped or feared. But what if all of this, the praise, the critique, the obsession, is not about women at all? What if it's a projection, a mirror held up to man's own unconscious? Carl Jung, Nietzsche's spiritual successor, would later call this projection the anima, the unconscious feminine that lives within every man. Jung believed that when a man looks at a woman, he doesn't just see her. He sees his own soul reflected in her mystery, her beauty, her unpredictability. And so we must ask, what if Nietzsche wasn't describing women? What if he was describing us? Not the reality of woman, but the way we use her image to mask our own fears. our need for control, our longing to believe in something eternal. Nietzsche didn't seek balance, he sought the edge, and gender, to him, was the sharpest blade. So now the mirror is in your hands, not to judge her, but to question yourself. What have you worshipped? What have you feared? And what if both were illusions? Because at the end of the abyss, when the gods are dead, when comfort is shattered, there is only the will. And the one who sees clearly without flinching holds the power, even if that power wears perfume. But perhaps most of all, a mirror, maker, the one who forces every reader to confront the mask they didn't know they were wearing. Because Nietzsche's greatest sin was never that he hated women, God, or morality. His sin was that he dragged each of us to the edge of the abyss, pointed at the darkness inside, and whispered, "This is you." Most people turned away. A few peered in and went mad. Fewer still kept looking until the darkness blinked back and dissolved. So what do we do with the mirror he left? 1. See the projection every sweeping claim about women, men, or humanity is a confession in disguise. Ask, what fear or wound in me needs this story to be true? The moment you answer honestly, the projection cracks. 2. Hold attention, some riddles are not meant to be solved. Woman, like life, is paradox, nurture and chaos, grace and power. To endure the paradox without collapsing into blame or worship is to grow dangerous in the Nietzschean sense. Awake, ungovernable, alive. 3. Transmute resentment, when you feel the itch to moralize, pause. Beneath resentment lies powerless desire. Channel that desire into creation, art, mastery, mission, anything that expands the will instead of shrinking it. 4. Choose lucid myth, making we can't escape stories, but we can write them consciously. Craft a myth of woman, man, and self that is wide enough for contradiction, strong enough for freedom, and honest enough to shatter when it no longer serves. Nietzsche's real legacy is not his conclusions. They were always provisional, sometimes poisoned. His legacy is the discipline of brutal introspection, the refusal to outsource meaning, the courage to stand naked before the mirror and say, "So this is what I am, now what shall I become?" If he walked among us today, he might sneer at social media's curated facades, laugh at our algorithmic morality, and still bleed ink on the same wound. Do not seek comfort, seek clarity, and when the mirror cuts you, let the blood remind you that you are still alive. Woman was his mirror. What or who is yours? Look, and keep looking, not to conquer what you see, but to recognize the face staring back. A beautiful contradiction. Nietzsche and feminism, there is a contradiction. Bold, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. Nowhere is it clearer than in the collision between Nietzsche's writings and modern feminism. On the surface, they seem irreconcilable. A man who wrote, "Everything in woman is a riddle, and everything in woman has one solution. It is called pregnancy," versus a movement that champions agency, equality, liberation. The tension is obvious, but beneath the outrage lies something more complex, a philosophical battlefield where both sides, ironically, are fighting the same war, the war against illusion. Nietzsche never wrote to be liked. He wrote to disturb. He saw comfort as the enemy of truth. He believed morality was a lie told by the weak to restrain the strong. In this framework, the early feminist movement might appear to Nietzsche as just another form of resentment, a rebranding of moral outrage used by the powerless to shame those with power. And yet, some of his ideas align uncannily well with feminism's most radical thinkers. Take Simone de Beauvoir. In The Second Sex, she wrote, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. a direct challenge to biological essentialism, to the idea that womanhood is destiny, not design. Nietzsche, who despised not design. Nietzsche, who despised fixed identities, who saw all categories, man, woman, good, evil as fragile human inventions, might have found this sentiment oddly resonant. For him, every identity is a mask. Useful, perhaps, but dangerous when mistaken for truth. Then there's Camille Paglia, provocative, fierce, untamed. She once claimed that Nietzsche was the first true feminist, because he didn't see women as angels or moral guardians, he saw them as forces of nature. Not victims, not servants, but erotic, creative, destructive powers. To Nietzsche, this wasn't an insult, it was awe. He feared woman because he saw in her the chaos of life itself, unpredictable, fertile, volcanic. A force that no system could contain. But here's the problem. Feminism didn't emerge from a place of power. It emerged from oppression, from silence, from invisibility. Women weren't feared for their power, they were dismissed, exploited, erased. And in that context, Nietzsche's romanticized vision of feminine chaos can feel tone deaf to women fighting for the right to vote, to work, to be treated as fully human. To them, his words weren't liberating. They were insulting, dismissive, cruel. But what if both perspectives are true? What if Nietzsche was not describing women as they are, but as they appear in a world built by men, a world where femininity is idolized and infantilized, where women are placed on pedestals only to be blamed when they fall? In that world, Nietzsche's harshest lines become less about women and more about the myths men construct to explain their fear of the feminine. Because at its core, feminism is not just about rights. It is about power, the power to define oneself, to act, to speak, to exist without being reduced to biology or fantasy. Nietzsche understood that hunger for power. He lived it, he embodied it, he just didn't believe anyone would grant it freely. Everything in woman is a lie, he once wrote. It's an ugly sentence, but maybe it reveals less about women and more about the roles they were forced to play. Roles created by a society that demanded perfection and punished authenticity. In that light, feminism is the refusal to lie anymore, the refusal to smile when dismissed, to submit when dehumanized, to seduce when survival is at stake. But Nietzsche never championed collective movements. He distrusted them. He believed all isms become herds. Even noble ideas, once institutionalized, decay into dogma. From that vantage point, feminism was not exempt. He might argue that, in trading one illusion for another victim, hood for moral superiority, it risks becoming what it once opposed. And yet here is the twist. Nietzsche and feminism may be incompatible in form, but not in spirit. Both challenge comfort, both question identity, both refuse to accept given truths, and both, when stripped to their core, seek a deeper freedom, freedom from expectation, from performance, from the invisible scripts we are forced to perform. The real conflict is not Nietzsche vs. feminism. It is illusion versus truth, conformity versus authenticity, submission versus power. Both Nietzsche and feminism ask a forbidden question. What if everything you believe about gender is a lie? But they answer it in different voices. Nietzsche speaks from the abyss, raw, cruel, prophetic. Feminism speaks from the margins, wounded, rising, fierce. And in the space where those voices clash, we are left with the most dangerous possibility of all, that the truth is not comfortable. And comfort is not freedom. Truth vs. illusion, Nietzsche, feminism, and the theater of the dead, it's truth versus illusion. And when both sides are honest, truly honest, they are waging the same war, just from opposite trenches. So maybe the question isn't who was right. Maybe the real question is, what happens when we stop using philosophy to judge and start using it to understand? to understand that woman is not a problem to be solved, nor a power to be feared. She, like man, is a mystery, complex, evolving, unfinished. Nietzsche gave us a language of discomfort. Feminism gave us a language of resistance. And somewhere in the tension between them lies the raw, unresolved truth of what it means to be human. Flawed, hungry, misunderstood, and still reaching for something more. If Nietzsche were alive today, he wouldn't be meditating in the mountains. He'd be dissecting Instagram captions. He wouldn't be writing books. He'd be scrolling, horrified through curated lives, filtered faces, and digital confessions dressed up as authenticity. Because the world he feared, the world he warned us about, it's not a metaphor anymore. It's here, it's now, and it's been monetized. Welcome to the age of seduction, not necessarily sexual but always strategic. We no longer sell products, we sell personalities, we sell lifestyles. We sell versions of ourselves optimized for attention, validated by algorithms, and sharpened for envy. In Nietzsche's terms, we are no longer beings, we are brands. And in this marketplace of illusion, the will to power has evolved. It's no longer just about conquest, wealth, or influence. It's about visibility, about occupying mind space, about becoming the image no one can scroll past. In this system, seduction isn't a gendered weapon. It's a survival strategy. Nietzsche understood seduction not as flirtation, but as dominance, the ability to distort perception, to pull others into your orbit, to make them desire what you represent, even if it's hollow. And now, with a mirror in every front camera and a stage in every pocket, we've all become seducers, selling curated glimpses of a life we no longer live because we're too busy performing it. This is where Nietzsche's critique of femininity takes a strange, prophetic turn. He once wrote that woman thrives in appearance, in surface, in the mask that she instinctively understands how to manipulate through charm, softness, vulnerability. At the time, that line was condemned as misogynistic. But today, look around. Who dominates the digital stage? Influencer culture, beauty filters, lifestyle aesthetics, emotional storytelling. These are the new empires, built not on land, but on impressions. And while women may have pioneered this space, men are catching up fast. Everyone's learning the same code: how to be desirable without being real, how to craft an identity that garners praise, sympathy, lust, admiration, whatever currency the moment demands. And Nietzsche, he would be horrified, not because he was a moralist, but because he believed in becoming, in shattering the role, the mask, the identity to discover something raw underneath. He feared performance. Not because it was fake, but because it calcifies the soul, because it buries the authentic self under layers of survival, adaptation, and fear. And now we are drowning in those layers. There's a line in the gay science: we are unknown to ourselves, we men of knowledge, and with good reason. We have never sought ourselves, so how could it happen that we should ever find ourselves? Now apply that to a world addicted to self-presentation, where finding yourself has been replaced by branding yourself, where self-discovery is measured in followers, not solitude. In this context, Nietzsche's supposed misogyny morphs into a broader warning, not against women, but against the feminization of culture in the archetypal sense. A drift away from depth toward appearance, away from being toward seeming. He feared that society would trade the essential for the aesthetic, that illusion would become truth, and we would forget the difference. And now, here we are. But Nietzsche never believed in despair. He believed in confrontation, in facing what repels us, not to condemn it, but to overcome it. He wouldn't tell us to unplug or retreat. He would ask, what are you using this illusion to hide from? What truth are you afraid to live? Who are you without the likes, the stories, the aesthetic armor? Because in a world of digital seduction, The greatest rebellion is not silence. It is sincerity. It's risking awkwardness, complexity, depth. It's daring to speak without polishing every sentence, to be seen without retouching every flaw. It's the refusal to perform even when performance is rewarded. Nietzsche's question was always the same: are you willing to suffer for truth, not abstract truth, personal truth, the kind that costs you approval, the kind that breaks the character you've spent years playing, the kind that strips away every borrowed identity until only the naked self remains shaking, unsure, and finally real. In the end, Nietzsche didn't fear seduction. He feared sedated minds, people lulled into comfort by illusion, people who traded becoming for belonging, power for performance, meaning for metrics. So maybe the real question is not whether social media has feminized us, but whether it has dehumanized us, made us all into reflections of reflections, simulations of desire, endlessly scrolling for something we've forgotten how to name. And Nietzsche, watching from the abyss, would whisper, "This is not freedom, this is not truth, this is the theater of the dead." Nietzsche and the mirror of woman, a myth beyond gender. What if Nietzsche wasn't speaking about women at all? What if every line that disturbed us, every phrase that sounded like condemnation, was never meant to be taken literally, but symbolically? Nietzsche was never a systematic philosopher. He was a poet of power, a myth-maker cloaked as a madman, a prophet of the unconscious who didn't offer answers, only fire. To take him literally is to miss the point. His words were not there to describe reality, they were meant to disturb it, to shake the surface, to make you look again, and then deeper. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he writes one of his most infamous lines: "Are you going to women? Do not forget the whip." It's been quoted endlessly. Ripped from context, hurled like a spear, misogyny, they say, arrogance, contempt. And perhaps on the surface it is, but surface was never Nietzsche's home. He lived in the abyss where symbols bleed, where meanings twist, and metaphors wear human faces. What if woman, in Nietzsche's writing, is not a person, but a metaphor for life itself, chaotic, fertile, indifferent, uncontainable? What if the whip is not an instrument of domination, but a symbol of discipline, of the strength required to withstand the seduction of existence? Nietzsche believed that life is not kind. It lures you with beauty, then breaks you with indifference. It seduces with meaning, then strips it away without warning. And in this dance, woman, as symbol, became the embodiment of becoming, not a finished form, but the eternal process. Flux, mystery, the shifting essence of being. In that light, Nietzsche wasn't afraid of women, he was afraid of life's refusal to be tamed. Think of how woman appears in mythology, not as servant, but as mystery. Pandora, Eve, Kali, Aphrodite, the feminine as both giver and destroyer of life, the bringer of temptation and transformation, woman as portal, as chaos veiled in grace. Nietzsche saw in this mythic figure the eternal tension of existence, the joy that wounds, the beauty that deceives, the freedom that demands sacrifice. He wrapped this tension in feminine form, not out of hatred, but because the feminine, in symbolic language, holds the paradox. It is the space between binaries, neither good nor evil, neither strong nor weak. It simply is. To read Nietzsche's attacks on women without this lens is to misread a man who never stopped questioning the nature of truth. He once wrote, "All things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails is a function of power, not truth." And yet we read his own writings as if they were fixed declarations instead of invitations to descend deeper into what we'd rather avoid. So let us try another interpretation. Let us imagine that Nietzsche's woman is not an insult but a mirror, a reflection of how humans experience life, with awe, with fear, with longing, and with despair. His cruelty was not directed at women, but at the illusions we project onto them, The way we demand that life be nurturing and gentle and curse it when it isn't. Nietzsche didn't want us to dominate women. He wanted us to stop expecting life to be fair, to be understandable, to be safe.